I'm learning a very important principle in the course of working on my circuit. Um, I'm learning that frequency in this new arrangement, this new circuit, frequency favors voltage over current. And that makes sense to me because frequency is potential energy. It's not kinetic energy. And so of course it would favor voltage over current, a higher frequency, whereas a lower frequency favors current over voltage, and there's a pretty commonsensical way of interpreting that, at least the way I look at it. If the sine wave alternates more slowly, then it has more time, it gives more of an opportunity for the current to catch up to the flipping polarity of the voltage. But if the voltage should alternate too quickly, then the current cannot keep up. Because inductors lag. The current lags in an inductor. And so with the voltage alternating very rapidly, like 300,000 cycles a second, by comparison to what I'm trying to do now, 30,000 cycles per second, at the higher frequency level, the current level doesn't rise to the same degree as at the lower frequency, and so you get a dominance of voltage over current. Now I'm trying to equalize them more or less. I want them more or less one-to-one relationship of current to voltage. So I'm trying to play with everything, first of all, to get the right overall wattage that I want, which is somewhere around in the vicinity of 67,000 watts, comparable for an electric car. But I also want the current and the voltage to be somewhat balanced. It has to be slightly more voltage than current, by a factor of I believe 1.67 to 1 voltage to current. But I'm not going to worry about that. That's kind of like a fine detail. Anyway, that could be considered 2 to 1 voltage to current. So I could shoot for 2 to 1 actually, now that I think of it. Because I'm trying to do ballpark figures because it's so complicated now. Then I'm including the Heaviside correction, but I'm not going to talk about that just now. I just wanted to get this out of the way. So I'm having to juggle all these different factors, and one of which is current on the one hand versus the size of the lumped voltage coil on the other. Because I have the circuit now divided into several segments. I have the lumped coils that are encouraging the electromotive force to express itself in the form of voltage. And then I have and those are the air core coils. And then I have the transformer coils that are iron core, in which I'm trying to accentuate current, namely the expression of magnetism, arising from the magnetomotive force. So, we want torque, but we also want speed in a motor, and so it's really a balancing act between all these different factors. So, and then there's the other problem. The other problem is when I create a surge, how often do the surges occur per unit time? Because for most of the duration of a surge, there's no power. The only power is at the peak. Now, I could favor voltage over current in such a manner that the surges are so close together, it's like they don't even have a chance to drop down before the next surge rises again, and so they're squashed, they're compressed all together. But then it's all voltage and no current. And that reminds me of a fibrillating heart. When a person is suffering a heart attack, the heart beats very fast, but it fails to it fails to pump the blood. And it's as if it's compensating by pumping too fast. Now that's voltage. The staccato peaks here of voltage being compressed together, and then at the expense of current, because it's not pumping any fluid. The current is not moving. So I'm understanding things now in terms that are more better, and I'm better understanding how to interpret a wiring diagram in terms of what I'm trying to achieve, and that's a motor. I'm trying to achieve a motor. So I have a little work ahead of me, but it has a lot to do with Heaviside now, I realize. And I got the insight from Quora. Somebody answered a question on Quora. I did. It's very hard to find help on negative power factor, but that's what I'm creating, and that's what I need help in. So every time I search, I'm lucky enough to find things I didn't see before. Maybe because of the way I phrased the search term phrase. And I read a fellow's post that really just gave it to me. It's the term Ferranti effect, Ferranti. And it's basically what Heaviside had to deal with. You know, the Heaviside problem is the Ferranti effect. But the fact that they phrased it the way they did, it just dawned on me, oh, I got to add a transformer to my circuit. I got to add an iron core, because all I have are these lumped cores with air core coils that are giving me, all the voltage I want, along with the negative power factor, but no current, no current that can be used in a motor. It's giving me current, but the structure of the circuit is all wrong. And so once I put in this transformer, it cost me a good deal of energy. And so now I'm having to make up for it in various ways, but also trying to be accurate at the same time. And it makes the circuit more unstable, so I have to add more capacitors. But it's going to be a kind of a combination between a Donald Smith device, in which you have a bunch of coils that are lumped together in close proximity to each other to one degree or another. And then you have the armature-oriented coils of an actual motor. So it's going to be some elements of both, which means obviously the motor has to be constructed from scratch, custom made. You can't use an off-the-shelf motor, unless I'm mistaken. I could be wrong, but at least it doesn't look that way at the moment. I think that's everything at the moment. So onward. I'll let you know later on how I'm doing. Well, so now I got these formulas. I got the RMS for wattage, and that's up here, and then I've split them into two parts. All the current between the two coils and all of the voltage, because I want to compare I want to see how they compare, because I want to make sure I have them balanced 1-to-1. So this, I believe, is the current. So the current, I'm looking at two rotor coils, because now I have two rotor coils instead of just one. So it gets a little bit more complicated. So this is the current between the two rotor coils. In red. Oh, it's very teeny weeny. Oh, I didn't wipe out the voltage yet, darn it. Oh, this won't do. I gotta start all over. Alright, now I can do the current. I'm trying to focus here. Without distraction. Ah, here we go. So it's the RMS, obviously, of the two currents added together. And the first peak is at, what is this? 43 amps, which is kind of low. 43 amps? Yeah, that doesn't, let's check that. No, that doesn't help. Okay. Okay, now we look at the voltage. We get the voltage formula. RMS. For the RMS addition of... Because I'm just trying to compare them before I put them together as wattage, so I know what I'm putting together. Instead of just being oblivious. Oh, I don't know. Come, look! Alright. Now the voltage is quite high. See, so I have the wrong balance. I've got to change the balance. So I got 5,500 volts by comparison to 40 amps RMS in each. And that's, of course, totally wrong. I had it balanced once before. I forgot how I do it. Anyway, so that's what I'm doing, and then once I see the right balance, then I take a look at the wattage. Out of curiosity, I guess we could take a look at the wattage. Wait a minute. If I look at the right thing here. Sorry about my microphone rubbing against my clothing here. It's kind of chilly and I have to wear lots of clothes here. Okay, so the wattage is very high. I only need 67,000. And it's already at 144,000 watts. And as you see, it's in the negative direction because it's a negative power factor, so the motor is acting as, or the circuit, I should say, is acting as a generator. Now it's not just a motor, it's lumped coils and a motor. The lumped is really the power supply over here, and then this is the motor over here, and then all these other things are lumped relationships, but I have a transformer and then the two rotor coils, and it really helped putting in capacitors. But then it also helped putting a resistor in here because the spark gap was failing to fire at low levels of this, the inductance of these two coils. They weren't developing enough voltage to fire the spark gap, and when the spark gap fails to fire, this entire circuit wants to surge to infinite gain and fry itself because the spark gap fails to fire to dissipate the surge and create those nice staccato wedges. Instead, it's just one wedge and it goes to infinite gain. So by adding this resistor here, I increase the resistance, the voltage on this side of the spark gap. I'm already getting plenty of voltage over on this side due to the 4-diode bridge and the capacitor. So I needed more on this side. Well, actually, I needed a voltage difference, but whatever. I put it here because that's what I've done in the past. 6 months ago, is I used to have a resistor here. And then instead of the spark gap, I had a capacitor. So I found I needed to bring in this resistors in order to fire the spark gap when I have these at low levels. You know, if I have this up at like 1,000 each, L1 and L2 at 1,000 henries, oh, great, yeah, no problem. But I don't want them that big. I'm trying to scale things down. As it is, I've got a 10 Henry coil over here on the transformer versus a 200 nanohenry, and that, as it is a little bit of a strain. But I did want to reduce the size of these coils, and so I had to put this, and I found that this resistor is basically a throttle now at this point, because if you raise it above the 1K ohms or lower it, then the overall wattage goes down. So the power level will go down, although I'm sure it's a little different. And it changes frequency, I think, too, but it probably is also changing the balance of current to voltage, depending on whether you raise it or lower it. And of course, a person could raise and lower the frequency, too, for that matter. You know, so there are different ways of throttling this, and probably throttling is a balance among all the different factors to come out, depending on the needs of the car. You know, are you throttling on level ground or throttling on a hill, or are you going down a hill as opposed to going up a hill? So it obviously gets a little complicated, but I'm just trying to look at the overall situation. You know, will a motor turn? Will I be able to turn the rotor shaft in terms of torque and in terms of speed? Now I get to focus on two different factors of turning the motor shaft. It's not enough just to turn it. Now I got to provide both speed and torque. One thing I'm leaving out here are the starter coils. Even though I used to call these starter coils, now I have to call them current coils. I have to relabel them. And these are my voltage coils. I don't have starter coils. I have to put them in somewhere. And they have to be rectified. Oh, that's why I'm not putting them in, because I won't be able to. That's right. I didn't pay $4,500 to get the full software. Yeah, I already did that separately, and that's already in my book. This is not in my book. I'll have to add it. Yeah, I have to do things piecemeal because I have to keep things simple because the software will tell me, sorry, you can't do that. It's too complicated. So yeah. Well, I already know how to do that. I've already done it. Um, None of these capacitors are pressurized. They're all the default value of equivalent series resistance of a ceramic capacitor. 10 milliohms, more or less, as a ballpark figure. But the starter coil requires a pressurized capacitor in order for that to be, the only coil in this whole circuit, the only component exhibiting something other than negative power factor, a positive power factor in the form of a DC, an approximation of a DC current. Because that sub-circuit, as I recall, you can go either way depending on how you engineer it. You can either have DC with current, pretty much all current for the most part and no voltage, or all voltage, no current. And of course I need it to be all current. Donald Smith told us that we can have this kind of flexibility. We can have anything we want in a circuit. And I'm beginning to appreciate to what degree he actually meant that, because I was clueless when he said that. I thought, my God, how do you do that, But I'm seeing it happen in front of my face, and I'm beginning to appreciate that. So it's quite a novel idea, but, you want to deliver whatever you need to deliver to get the job done. And it's really just a technicality of how to go about doing it. So I got some more work. I just thought I'd give you a little update before I work any further, before I lose the thought, for that matter. These are all important thoughts.